It was just another quiet afternoon in suburban New Hampshire when Karoline Leavitt walked into her living room and froze. Her housekeeper, Maria, a kind-hearted woman who had worked with the family for years, was standing in the corner, her eyes downcast, as two visitors laughed cruelly at her accent and worn shoes. The air felt thick with judgment and cruelty. But what Karoline did next didn't just silence the room, it stunned everyone. Karoline felt her pulse quicken. She had always believed in treating everyone with dignity. Her parents had raised her that way. Maria had been with her family since Karoline was a teenager. She remembered the nights Maria stayed late when Karoline was sick, the way she always left a little note beside her lunch with a smiley face drawn in pen. But now Maria looked small, embarrassed, as if she didn't belong in the house she helped hold together. The two women laughing, acquaintances from a local charity committee, didn't seem to notice the shift in the room. One of them even leaned closer to Maria and said, "You must be lucky to work in a house like this. Do they let you use the front door?" That was it. Karoline stepped forward, her voice calm but cutting through the air like a knife. "That's enough," she said. The laughter stopped. "Maria is not lucky to be here. We are lucky to have her. And if you can't speak to her with respect, then you're not welcome in my home." A heavy silence fell. The women stared at Karoline, mouths slightly open, unsure how to react. Maria looked up, her eyes wide with a mix of surprise and something else. Gratitude. But Karoline wasn't done yet. She turned to Maria, gently took her hand, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You are family." Maria didn't say anything at first. Her hand trembled slightly in Karoline's, but her eyes began to fill with tears, not of shame, but of something much deeper. After years of being invisible in rooms like this, someone had finally seen her. The two women stood in awkward silence, unsure whether to defend themselves or apologize. One of them muttered, "We didn't mean anything by it." But Karoline didn't flinch. She simply turned away and said, "You should go." They left without another word. Karoline walked Maria to the kitchen, where the smell of fresh lavender still lingered from the candle Maria lit every morning. They sat at the table, the same one where Karoline had done homework as a teenager while Maria folded laundry nearby. "I'm sorry," Karoline said, breaking the silence. "I should have said something sooner. You should never have to deal with that." Maria shook her head. "You didn't have to say anything, but you did." Her voice was quiet but steady. Years of holding her chin up through whispers, dismissive glances, and thoughtless remarks had made her strong. But Karoline's words had given her something else, dignity. That night, Karoline posted a short message online, not to call anyone out, but to speak up for kindness. She didn't expect it to go viral, but it did. Within hours, thousands of people began sharing their own stories of housekeepers, caregivers, janitors, grocery clerks, the quiet backbone of their daily lives. People they had taken for granted, people who deserved better. Karoline didn't care about the attention. What mattered to her was that Maria smiled a little more brightly the next morning when she walked in, holding her usual coffee and humming softly under her breath. By the end of the week, Karoline's inbox was flooded with messages, some from strangers thanking her, others sharing heartbreakingly similar stories. A woman in Texas wrote about her nanny who'd raised 3 generations of her family. A man in Ohio said he never truly saw his building's night janitor until he read Karoline's post. But not every response was kind. A few comments accused her of overreacting. "It was just a joke," some said. "People are too sensitive these days." One even went so far as to say, "Why make a scene over a maid?" Karoline didn't reply to any of them. Instead, she printed one of the hurtful comments out, circled it, and handed it to Maria the next day. Maria read it silently. Then she looked up at Karoline and smiled. Not bitterly, but like someone who'd lived long enough to recognize ignorance when she saw it. "I used to think silence was safer," Maria said. "But silence is just another kind of permission." Karoline felt a knot in her throat. She knew then that this was bigger than just one afternoon in her living room. The following weekend, Karoline invited Maria to speak at a local community event, a gathering focused on labor rights and immigrant voices. At first, Maria hesitated. "Who would want to hear from someone like me?" she asked. Karoline simply replied, "Everyone. They just don't know it yet." On the day of the event, Maria stood behind the podium in a simple navy blouse, her hands slightly shaking, but her voice clear. She told her story of moving to the U.S. 20 years ago, of cleaning homes so her daughter could become the first in their family to attend college, of the quiet dignity she carried despite being treated as invisible. When she finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Then someone began clapping, then another. Soon, the entire room was on its feet. Maria didn't cry, not this time. She just stood there, straight-backed and proud. After that speech, Maria didn't return to work as usual. Not because she quit, but because her life had entered a new chapter. A local organization invited her to join an advisory board on immigrant labor rights. A nearby high school asked her to speak about compassion and respect. Slowly, Maria began writing down pieces of her story, not to complain, but to remind others that everyone deserves to be seen, heard, and treated with dignity. Karoline, too, changed. She continued her work, but with a new sense of purpose. She began using her voice not just to speak for others, but to make space for them. In meetings, in community events, she no longer just invited people to the table, she made room for them to lead. Maria still visited Karoline's home once a week, not as a housekeeper, but as a guest, a friend, someone the entire family now saw as part of their own. One spring afternoon, they sat on the porch, watching Maria's daughter, now a senior in college, studying law, laughing and chatting with Karoline's younger brother. "That baby I used to carry is about to graduate," Maria said, her voice full of pride. Karoline smiled, raising her cup of tea. "And you're one of the strongest women I know." A soft breeze passed through the garden, peaceful, whole. The story had started with a simple moment, one woman standing up for another. But from that moment, a voice was reclaimed, a community began to see with new eyes, and a friendship became proof that respect can change the world, one heart at a time.